If you've ever sent an invoice and then spent the next week answering questions about it, this video is for you. We're going to look at what happens when AI takes your rough project notes and turns them into professional, client-ready invoice descriptions in under 2 minutes. Same information, completely different result. And by the end of this video, you'll have a prompt template you can paste into any AI tool you're already using and start running this workflow today. Here's what most freelance invoices actually look like. Design work, $2,750. That's it. No breakdown, no context, no explanation of what the client is actually paying for. And the client, who isn't a designer, looks at that number and starts asking questions. Not because they don't trust you, but because they genuinely don't know what the $2,750 bought them. What pages were built? What does design work actually include? Were revisions part of this or extra? Every one of those questions is a delay. And the frustrating part is that you did the work, you earned the number. The only thing missing is the documentation to support it. That single line creates friction that didn't need to exist. A clearly described invoice removes the question before it ever gets asked. Here's what that friction actually costs in real time. A vague invoice goes out. The client has questions, reasonable ones, not hostile ones. You go back and forth over email trying to explain what you already did and why it was worth what you charged. Eventually, you resend something cleaner. And somewhere in that process, 7 to 14 extra days have passed before money hits your account. That's not a difficult client. That's not a complicated project. That's a documentation gap creating a cash flow problem. And it happens on nearly every vague invoice, not just occasionally. The fix isn't a better client relationship or a longer email explanation after the fact. The fix is an invoice that doesn't raise questions in the first place. Now look at the math on the manual version. Writing strong, clear invoice descriptions from scratch usually take about 45 minutes per invoice when you're doing it properly. For a busy freelance designer sending 20 or more invoices a month, that's 15 hours. Every single month. Not doing design work, not talking to clients, not building the business, writing line items. And the other problem with doing this manually is that the quality isn't consistent. On a good week with energy to spare, you write sharp, professional descriptions that hold up to scrutiny. On a packed week, when you're juggling 3 active projects and invoicing the last thing on your list, you throw something together and hope nobody asks questions. AI doesn't have good weeks and bad weeks. It produces the same quality output on a Tuesday morning and a Friday afternoon. That consistency is part of what makes this workflow worth building. This is the core of what we're demonstrating today. You take your rough project notes, the kind of shorthand you actually write during a job, not a polished summary, and you feed them into a structured prompt. AI processes that input and produces professional, client-facing invoice language on the other side. You stay in control of every number and every final decision. The dollar amounts, the quantities, the go or no go before it leaves your outbox. All of that stays with you. What changes is how long the translation takes. Right now, that translation takes 45 minutes of deliberate effort. After this workflow, it takes under 2 minutes, and the output is more consistent than what most people produce manually on their best day. The prompt that drives this workflow needs 4 things from you. Project type. What kind of engagement was this? A website redesign, a logo package, a full brand identity system? Work performed. Your actual rough notes from the project and informal language is completely fine here. We'll see exactly why in a moment. Client name and context. Are they new to working with you? A long-term retainer? A specific industry that might shape how you describe the work? And tone. Professional, friendly, or formal, depending on the nature of the relationship. 4 inputs, 1 structured prompt. That's the entire setup before AI takes over. This is what the designer brought to the prompt. Not a polished project brief, not a clean summary written for client consumption, just the actual notes from a real web design job, exactly as they were written. 3 pages built, 2 rounds of logo revisions, file exports in PNG, SVG, and PDF, some back and forth with client on color direction, and images compressed for web performance. Lowercase. No sentence structure. Abbreviations throughout. This is exactly what AI is designed to work with. The whole premise of this workflow is that you shouldn't have to clean up your notes before they become an invoice. The cleanup is what the prompt handles. You paste in what you actually have, not what you wish you had written. Here's what the full prompt looks like with the notes loaded in. The opening line establishes the role: professional invoice writer for a freelance web designer. That framing matters because it activates the kind of professional language patterns AI draws from when constructing the output. Then the 4 fields follow in order: project type with enough specificity to be useful, the raw work notes pasted in exactly as written, client context so AI knows the relationship, and the tone preference. The closing instruction is where a lot of the output quality comes from. Write client-facing line items with brief descriptions and include a short project summary focused on client outcomes, not just tasks completed. That last distinction, outcomes, not tasks, is what separates an invoice that builds confidence from one that just documents what happened. It's worth including in your prompt every single time. Here's the first half of the output. 4 clean line items, each with a service name, a plain English description a non-designer can read and understand, quantity, and an amount placeholder for you to fill in with your own pricing. Website design and build, responsive layout, style to brand. Logo revisions, 2 rounds based on client feedback, delivered in PNG, SVG, and PDF formats. Color direction, collaborative palette review and finalization, including consultation and revised mockups. Web performance optimization, compression and optimization of all site images for fast load times and improved user experience. Every one of those descriptions came directly from the raw notes on the previous slide. Nothing was invented, nothing was embellished. AI translated the shorthand into the language a client actually needs to see on an invoice. Notice that some back and forth on colors became collaborative color palette review and finalization, including consultation and revised mockups. Same work described in a way that communicates value instead of effort. The second half of the output is where something genuinely useful happens that most freelancers skip entirely. AI produces a short project summary and what's included statement, both written from the client's perspective, not the designer's. Every element was refined with your customer experience in mind. Your site reflects your business with confidence. This is the language that answers the question clients are silently asking when they look at an invoice total. Was this worth what I'm paying? A strong project summary answers that before they have to ask. Most freelancers don't write this section because it takes time, and it's the last thing you want to do when you're trying to close out a project. The prompt asks for it automatically. You get it every time without having to remember to include it. The before and after here are from the same exact project. Same work performed, same hours logged, same designer. One invoice says website design, $2,750 with nothing else. The other has 4 itemized item lines with clear professional descriptions and a project summary paragraph focused on the client's outcomes. The client reading the first one has questions. The client reading the second one has context and confidence. Context removes friction. Friction is what delays payment. And the only difference between these 2 invoices is whether someone took the time to translate the work into client readable language, and now that translation takes 2 minutes instead of 45. Invoice descriptions are a strong fit for AI because the task is structurally identical every single time. You have raw information about work performed. It needs to follow a consistent professional format. The output has to be readable to someone who doesn't know your trade. That's a pattern. AI has processed enormous amounts of professional business writing and has a strong signal for what client-facing language looks like across industries and project types. The same reason it writes strong emails and proposals, which we covered early in this series, is the same reason it handles invoice descriptions cleanly and consistently. Structured input, predictable output format, professional language as a target. That's the kind of task where AI performs reliably, not occasionally. Three things still need your attention before the invoice goes out, and none of them are complicated. Dollar amounts. AI leaves placeholders because it has no idea what your rates are, and that's by design. You fill those in from your own pricing structures. Hours and quantities. Cross-check what AI produced against your actual time log before you send. If the note said revisions times 2 and the output says 2 rounds, that's fine. But if the quantity looks off, that's yours to catch. And client relationship. AI produces professional or friendly language based on what you tell it in the tone field. But you're the one who knows whether this particular client needs an even warmer or more formal approach than your default. These aren't weaknesses in the workflow. They're the review pass that keeps you in control of what goes out under your name. If the first output doesn't quite match the relationship, one follow-up prompt gets you there without starting over. Make the tone warmer. This client is a long-term relationship. We've worked together for 3 years. That's the entire follow-up. The line items stay exactly the same. The language shifts. The output comes back with a noticeably warmer voice, the kind of language that fits a 3-year working partnership, not a first project. It's been such a pleasure working through this one together. Reads very differently than a standard professional summary. And the client on the receiving end of that invoice knows you actually thought about them when you wrote it. One short follow-up prompt, 10 seconds, the invoice now fits the relationship. The math compounds fast and it only moves in one direction. Manual invoice writing for 20 invoices a month, 900 minutes. AI assisted at the same volume, 80 minutes. That's 13 plus hours returned every single month from one workflow change. For a solo freelancer, that's a full additional day of client-facing work that was previously buried in administrative writing. For a small agency where multiple people are invoicing regularly, the gap multiplies across the team. And the quality doesn't drop as the volume goes up, which is exactly what happens with manual invoicing when things get busy. There's something worth naming beyond the time savings. When every invoice you send looks polished and professional, regardless of how chaotic the particular week was, clients notice. They may not say anything directly, but consistency signals reliability. A client who consistently receives clear, well-described invoices starts associating that level of professionalism with your work overall, not just your billing. That association builds the kind of trust that turns a one-time project into a repeat engagement, and a satisfied client into someone who refers you to their network. AI doesn't have an off week. It doesn't produce a rougher invoice on a Friday when you're stretched thin. Every client gets the same quality output every time. Two timelines side by side. Vague invoice. Send it, client has questions, back and forth over email, you clarify and resend, payment arrives on day 14. Clear invoice, send it, payment arrives on day 5. 9 days faster on a single invoice. Across a full month of invoicing, that difference in cash flow timing is meaningful, especially for a freelancer managing their own business finances without a billing department to chase payments. The cause of the delay in the first scenario isn't a difficult client. It's an invoice that required a follow-up conversation to make sense of. Remove the confusion, and you remove the delay. This is your take-home asset from the video. The reusable prompt template, ready to paste into ChatGPT, Claude, or any other AI tool you're already using. Swap in your trade, your project type, your raw notes, your client context, your tone preference. That's the only customization required. Save this as a text snippet, a note in your project management tool, a pinned document, wherever you keep the things you reach for regularly. The more consistently you run this prompt, the faster invoicing becomes and the more automatic the quality gets. It stops being a task you have to think about and becomes just part of how you close a project. Let's put the whole picture together. Raw project notes went into a structured 4-field prompt. AI produced clean, professional line items and a client-facing project summary focused on outcomes. You verified the numbers, made the tone adjustment if needed, and sent an invoice your client could read and understand without a follow-up email. That's the entire workflow. Under 2 minutes of AI involvement. No fabrication, no embellishment, just a translation of the work you already did into language that supports the invoice you already earned. The 45 minutes you used to spend on this are now available for something else. This is part of our Making AI Work series, practical demonstrations of what AI handles in real business workflows. No theory required. If you need this at scale for your team, let's talk. You can find us at eauclaireai.com. And subscribe if you want new workflows like this one delivered every week. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.